You don't need to be foreign policy genius to understand that Russia has been trying to influence certain developments in its so-called New Abroad for the last 25 years. And in this respect, New Abroad accounts for the countries that once belonged to the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. All of these countries shared one very peculiar feature, namely the very fact that after the breakup of the Soviet Union, they've inherited very strong Russian-speaking minorities who happen to live within its borders. That is why when the events of the Ukrainian civil war broke out and the Ukrainian coup d'etat ousted President Viktor Yanukovych from power, everyone in the West started blaming Russian President Vladimir Putin for masterminding and executing his global plan of restoring Russian glory by reinvigorating Russian-speaking populations in the former republics and using them as political token in the game against the West. One has to admit that there is a compelling reason behind these accusations, as without little green people appearing out of nowhere in Crimea, this peninsula wouldn't be annexed to Russian Federation, and without President Putin's thugs who shot down the Malaysian airplane, and without his little secret army that started the civil war in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, this country's territorial integrity wouldn't be questioned today. Said that, however, blaming Russia for everything that went wrong in Ukraine in recent years is like accusing Pope Francis that he's not Catholic enough. You see, the Russian policymaker is not stupid. He would never intervene in the country that is strong and powerful. They always choose countries that suffer an internal crisis and divisions, and Ukraine is a perfect example of that. And there are 10 compelling reasons behind this state of affairs. And the first one comes down to corruption, and the very fact that in 2012, Ernst & Young survey puts Ukraine as one of 3 most corrupted countries in the world. And that has a tangible effect on the integrity of the political system and its ability to protect itself from foreign influence. The second reason comes down to lack of strategic thinking of its corrupted political elite, as Ukrainian politicians were more preoccupied with the notion of holding power than reforming country's economy from stagnating socialist past. The third reason has to do with the fact that pro-Western Ukrainians from the west of the country and pro-Eastern Ukrainians from the east of the country could never find a common ground of agreement, and they engage in constant political turmoil that has weakened the country in general. The next reason comes down to the military and the very fact that in 2014 the country's army was totally defenseless. Partly it has to do with the fact that the consecutive Ukrainian governments neglected the need to modernize the country's economy that had to rely on post-Soviet equipment. And partly it has to do with the fact that in 2014, when the crisis unfolded, the Ukrainian military leaders did not know whom to listen to, whether to listen to the president or newly appointed government. The fifth reason has to do with the fact that in 1994, Ukraine has voluntarily gave up its right to nuclear weapons that it has inherited after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Because there was an international conference that deliberated on the issue, and Russia was part of this conference, and Russia actually promised Ukrainian territorial integrity. But the members of Ukrainian political establishment have failed to ask themselves one very important question. Can they actually trust Russia? The only Western political commentator who warned Ukraine against this deal was Professor John Mearsheimer, who suggested that if you will give up these weapons, your territorial integrity might be questioned in the future. But the members of Ukrainian political establishment back then did not listen, and now they face the consequences of their misjudgment. The sixth reason has to do with Ukraine abandoning its air carrier program. The old Soviet Union was building its air carriers in Ukrainian shipyards, and over the last 10 years of its existence, Soviet Union commissioned 3 aircrafts. One of them was Admiral Kuznetsov, that now belongs to Russia, and another 2 was air carrier Kiev and air carrier Varak. So in terms of air carrier Kiev, it was sold to Chinese company and turned into luxury hotel, and Varak was sold to one of the Chinese gambling companies in order to be turned into swimming casino. But unsurprisingly, it has eventually ended up in the hands of People's Liberation Army and turned into an air carrier known under the name of Yang. Naturally, not many countries in the world can afford to have their own fleet of air carriers, but having one of them in 2014 could have proven very handy to Ukrainian policymakers. Instead, Ukrainian army has proven to be totally defenseless. The seventh reason comes down to not using the achievements of Orange Revolution of 2004 and not pursuing modernization, democratization agenda and postponing necessary political and economic reforms. The next reason comes down to the total reliance on Russian gas supplies and the very fact that the members of Ukrainian political establishment did very little to free themselves from economic influence of Russian Federation. The ninth reason has to do with language policy of the new administration, as just 2 days after the President Yanukovych was ousted from power, the new administration decided to put forward a bill suggesting that the Ukrainian language would be the only language acceptable in Ukraine. In this respect, the new administration not only disregarded the needs and the rights of 12 million ethnic Russians living in eastern and southern parts of the country, but also Bulgarians, Romanians, and other minorities who inhabited this country. Unfortunately, it was a very insensitive policy, and it has poured more gasoline into fire that led to various tragedies. As a matter of fact, if anyone in Westminster would come up with similar idea of forbidding the use of any other language than English, Queen's English, from use in the Great Britain, would most probably lead Scottish, Irish, and Welsh people to march on London. Having said that, one has to admit that the last and the most important reason why Ukraine Crimea has fallen to Russia was the very fact that there was not a single shot fired in its defense. On one hand, when we consider potential civilian casualties, such a development was of a blessing, but Ukrainian political establishment needs to come to terms with the fact that the territorial integrity of the country is a special value which is connected to their national interests. What's more, by allowing what has happened in Crimea, the members of Ukrainian political establishment have encouraged the aggressor to extend his policy of conquest into the eastern Ukraine. Fortunately, when it comes to eastern Ukraine, the Ukrainians came to their senses and started defending their land. But still, up to this very day, the situation in Lugansk and Donetsk regions are far from resolved. On behalf of International Relations Daily, it was Piotr Pietrzak. It was a pleasure to talk to you. If you like this video and if you wish to watch similar video in the future, please subscribe to this channel.